Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Joined again today by my dear friend, the editor and publisher of the Spun.com, Matt Hladek, who joins us each and every week. Matt is a national media member who covers the NFL in totality. I cover the Raiders microly. He covers the NFL macroly. It's just a great perspective on stories. Matt, let's just get right to the elephant in the room. I sit down with Amy Trask, but let's go back and put it in perspective. Mark Davis has done a phenomenal job business-wise with the Las Vegas Raiders. Phenomenal, not good. He's done a phenomenal job. They have the best stadium in the NFL, the best team headquarters. It isn't even close. The team headquarters, the team that once struggled financially in every way, now is flush with cash so they can do deals with signing bonuses and all kinds of stuff. The Raiders he has totally set the Raiders up for a century of financial success. Now, if they don't win, there's no excuse from the owner's standpoint. He's eaten tens of millions in contracts, getting rid of coaches. He has proven he is all in. And so as I begin, in the 5 years of covering this beat, all I heard was, oh, the Raiders ain't got no money. Raiders are broke. And I'm like, what are they talking about? It isn't true. And so as I started, and Mark Davis wasn't in ownership, he wasn't in management. In fairness, you know, Al wasn't here to ask. So as I would go to older Raiders, they'd say, you got to talk to Amy Trask, got to talk to Amy Trask. She was, of course, the first CEO, female CEO of an NFL team. And so I reached out to Amy and I just said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the history of the Raiders, whatever. So I flew to Los Angeles and sat down with her at a beautiful hotel on the bay. And we had this conversation in which, you read in the article about the Raiders' woes and why. Al was loyal to Oakland and made maybe some business decisions that were from the heart and not from the wallet, which in a world of greedy people, you can't be angry at that. But she talked about him wanting, at one point, not wanting to, but just saying, the struggle's too much. Let's sell the team. And she said, no, I'll go find the money. We got to save it from Mark. I'm just curious. I thought that was so fascinating when I was sitting there. The respect she has for Mark Davis, the respect that she had for the franchise, the respect that she had for Al Davis. I thought it was amazing. And when she said that, my chin about hit the floor. I would love to get your reaction to that deep dive article.
Well, Amy is a figure around the NFL, well known, a lot of gravitas that she has, from her years in that position. So to hear her say that was pretty interesting. And it would have been a crazy situation because, you know, the Raiders are synonymous with Davis family. It
Yes.
is just for 60 something years that the Davises have been in charge of the Raiders. And you think going back to the AFL days, Al Davis getting his start with the franchise and then becoming the owner, it's tough to imagine the Raiders not being a part of the Davis family. It's like the Rooney's not owning the Steelers, or
Right.
the Maras not owning the Giants. One of those franchises with a lot of history and tradition, and it's been passed down through generation. So I think it's obviously it's a great story. I think it's a good thing. I commend Amy Trask for kind of stepping up in that moment because you know again, some Raider fans can say, well, what if they had sold? Would we have won more? Would we not? You don't know. You have no idea. But I think it means a lot to still have that Davis family involvement. And I think, like you said, Mark Davis has done a good job setting the franchise up financially for success. Now it's just a matter of can its success follow on the field?
You know, uh, it's a different NFL than when Al was here. And I'm
Mhm.
not minimizing what Al did, but it is a different NFL with roster, you know,
Sure.
all of the roster requirements, the salary caps, all of it. And so for Mark to have put this franchise in the position, he has set them up long after Mark Davis is gone. People are still going to have to look back, if they're being honest, at how he set this team up financially to succeed, and whoever the next owner is, um, the way he set them up to succeed has been nothing short of brilliant on Mark's part.
I agree. I agree. I
And
think that they are, like you said, financially, they've capitalized on everything they needed to with the move to Vegas, the new stadium. The fan base has always been there, the national, international fan base. So, but
it's amazing.
to be able to capitalize on that and get the the money from it, and to set your team up financially. You can't say the guy doesn't have a good business sense. Number one, you can't say he doesn't care about winning because, like you said, he's willing to eat the contracts. He's willing to spend the money to make the franchise better, put the best possible product on the field. You just got to find that right winning combination, which hopefully they're on the way to do.
I agree. All right, I want to dig into a little bit of a different perspective, and our Michael France is working on a tremendous article about this. But the Raiders quarterback room has taken a beating um, in the national media. And when you and I have already talked about Aiden O'Connell's numbers compared to Trevor Lawrence at the same time, compared to, yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Uh, we've talked, excuse me, Josh Allen. Well, we've Gardner, Trevor Lawrence. My point that I want to make to you is that a lot of times in the media, you see them go after the low hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, do not think the Raiders, I don't think we know where the Raiders quarterback room is. But the fact that you look at what Aiden's done, what Gardner's done, I don't think it's in as bad a shape as anyone thinks it is. I was very critical last year, very critical of Jimmy Garoppolo. I said this right with you. I said this is going to be a sink or swim, and Ziegler and McDaniels are weighing their legacy on Jimmy Garoppolo. I would not, but it's their legacy. You give them the time to prove it right or wrong. To me, I don't think there's that big of a gamble here with O'Connell and Minshew. I just don't see it as bad. Where am I wrong, Matt, or am I right?
Well, I think, like you said about it, is not a huge gamble because you don't have either of them locked up for long term or for major financial commitments. With Gardner, you know what you're getting. You're getting a guy who's been around the NFL a while. He can win you some games. He can keep you in some games. He could be a backup and a spot bridge starter type. So you're getting that. You understand. Aiden O'Connell, you're still kind of looking to see what his ceiling is in the NFL. But here's the thing: if he is here this year and he doesn't really, show what the Raiders are looking for, or they think, okay, this kid's probably just a backup or a marginal starter, we can improve at this position. It doesn't really cost you anything because you didn't put in a tremendous amount of resources to him. You didn't sign him to a big free agent deal. He wasn't a first round pick, a top 10 pick. So you can more easily, more readily move off of that type of player. So I think the Raiders have some flexibility at the quarterback position. To me, I think that, and listen, you want to get off to a great start if you're a head coach. I mean, Antonio Pierce did have half a season as the interim, but his first season now as the full-time head coach. You want to get off to a good start. You're under pressure no matter where you are to win right away. It's just the nature of professional sports, nature of the NFL. However, I think that the majority of Raider fans understand it's not a Super Bowl caliber team right now. So you're not talking about a roster, say, I don't know, let's just look at, say, like the Cleveland Browns that have a lot of talent on their roster, won a lot of games, even with marginal quarterback play or with different guys coming in and out of the lineup. But that investment into Deshaun Watson is, you're thinking that's a sticking point because that's holding them down, and they put all that money in. They're a quarterback away from really making noise. People talk about in the NFC, is Dak Prescott ever going to get over the hump with the Cowboys, or are they going to move on from him? Where you're saying, is the quarterback good enough? Is Brock Purdy good enough to win a Super Bowl for the Niners? We've seen him get there, almost win it. So I think the quarterback question of is it enough? Are they good enough? If you have a Super Bowl contending roster, then I think it's more of a pressing issue. But as the Raiders continue to build, I think they're in an okay spot because they have flexibility for 2025 and beyond at the position.
Great. Now, before we go any further, I want to remind everybody, obviously this is Friday. Coming up Saturday and Sunday, we have 2 more podcasts with Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, longtime Raider coach, NFL, highly respected offensive savant, Coach Tom Walsh will be back for 2 podcasts, Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be going inside the lab, learning football at the NFL level, where it's going to be fantastic. Don't miss that. That's Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday, Memorial Day, a very special show. Very special show that you're not going to want to miss on Memorial Day. So we got podcasts 365 days a year coming at you. We never take a break. Make sure you don't miss them. Now, I want to turn to Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. I have briefly touched this with you in the past, but after the draft, I asked an NFL executive who I highly respect, what did you think of the Raiders draft? He said, this is what I think of the draft. You saw Tom Telesco picked 8 AP type players. He wasn't hedging his bet on, well, I'm going to probably get rid of him, like a lot of GMs who inherit a coach that want their guy. He said, I thought if the biggest takeaway for me was not the 8 picks, it was about the 8 picks, and it talked to me about the relationship between AP and Tom Telesco. They're all in it together. I have learned from people in the building that there is terrific respect for each other, that they both have been surprised at how well the other one listens. I've been around a lot of these coaching changes, GM changes, whatever. Matt, I've never seen one that has gone as seamless as this. I'm shocked, not because I disrespect either man. I have tremendous respect for him. So I guess I shouldn't say I'm shocked because it takes a lot to earn my respect. But I think that is the story that no one's talking about with the Raiders. Please give me your opinion.
Well, you always want that kind of synchronicity, that alignment between the GM and the head coach. And a lot of times you see it, it can kind of be a touchy situation when the coach is in place before the general manager, especially in this case where the GM is coming from outside the organization. Obviously, Tom Telesco knew the Raider organization from being with the Chargers and vice versa. They knew him, but still he's coming outside the organization. And the guy who many people thought was going to be the GM, Champ Kelly, doesn't get the job, but is still involved in the organization and is still there. So that's a situation where on paper there could be some friction and it could be combustible. The fact that it's not so far is a good sign that all these guys are on the same page. They're thinking in the same direction. They're on the same timeline. I think that that's also important. I think that, it's a good sign for the Raiders. Again, there's no results we can judge them on yet. That'll come in a few months. That's the ultimate scale that we weigh every coach and GM and regime on. But I think at this point, you're going off of process. You're going off of how they're seem to be building their team and what their plan is. And it seems sound at this point. It's a good sign.
Last year, Michael Mayer, the Raiders and others felt he was the best tight end. The Raiders had a very high grade on him, a mid-first round grade. They tried to get back in the first round to get him. The cost was too high. They waited. Boom, they were able to pick him up in the second round. Injury issues last year a little bit. At Notre Dame, he was gregarious. He was their offense. The kid, I remember specifically watching a play when he got tattooed. I mean, he got nailed. And he gets up, smacks the guy in the butt. Good job. Like, I love it. And we didn't see that Michael Mayer. And I was talking to him earlier this week on Tuesday, and I just said to him, it looks like Michael Mayer of Notre Dame is back. And now I love the kid. I think personally he's just a terrific kid. Just forget football, just a great kid. Are people sleeping on Mayer because of the injury? And when you look at Bowers and Mayer back to back tight ends, dangerous can this be? And is Michael, are people sleeping on Mayer?
Well, I think that people going into last year, I remember feeling like they got a steal with him, and I think a lot of people were feeling like they had a potential big weapon with Michael Mayer. And but I do think because, like you said, with some of the injuries and you know them taking Brock Bowers, who was this big time hype tight end prospect, people were surprised, number one, that he fell to 13, and then surprised number
Stunned.
two, the Raiders took him at 13 because nobody really had pegged them to take him because everyone thought he'd be gone by that point. So I think that Michael Mayer does kind of get overshadowed in that sense, but I do still believe I believe in his talent. I believe in his ability. Like you said, his senior year, or I can't remember, he only stayed 3 years at Notre Dame. His last year at Notre Dame, he was their offense. When they dropped back, you knew that he was option 1, 2, and 3 on a play. They were bracketing him, and he was still getting thrown the ball. So I think that there's a lot of room for the Raiders to be creative. I think that with they can utilize both of those tight ends. They can utilize, the different skill sets they have. We know they have good receivers that they can mix into. So I think that you're going to hear from Michael Mayer this year. Do I think he's going to put up massive numbers? No, because honestly, other than Devontae Adams, I'm not sure who's going to put up the massive receiving numbers for Raiders because they have a bunch of other options as well. So they can really spread it around. But I think he's going to have an impact that you're going to see what people thought they were going to get when he came out in the draft.
Totally agree. All right. I want to, by the way, we're not done at all, but I want to take a minute because we always do it at the end. I want to do it in the middle. Tell everyone where they can find you on X.
Sure, you can find me on X, the app formerly known as Twitter, at Matt Hladik 919 at MATTHLADIK 919. And I've already had a bunch of Raider fans hop over and join me on there. And I'm always up to discuss some ball. And during the I tweet about the NFL and stuff, obviously during the off season, during the season, on Sundays, you'll get a lot of different feedback from me, not just during the Giants Jets games because they're local, but also I'll be talking about the Raiders. I'll be talking about the primetime games, everything in general. So
Awesome. Remember, you can follow me on IG when you go to @HondoSR, on X at Hondo Carpenter. All right. Patrick Graham, you know the respect I have for him, the respect that the NFL has for him. And I was visiting with him this week, and I asked him about, you're a tinkerer, and you had the number one defense last year after AP took over. Last 9 games, you had number one defense. And you add a Christian Wilkins, you got 9 starters back. I mean, there is a lot of things that you could do, and all he would do was smile. Are the possibilities of what Patrick Graham can do with this team in 2024 are amazing. What are your expectations of Patrick Graham? Because I've always had high expectations of him, and he's met them when he was allowed to.
sure, I think that going back to his days, even the DC of the Giants, one thing I've always been impressed with him is his ability to kind of mix and match and take the personnel that's available to him and make the most of it. When he was with the Giants, he had a couple of pieces on the defensive line, but he really didn't have a great pass rush, and he didn't have a ton of great personnel. But he was able to make it a functioning, competent enough defense, especially his first season there. With the Raiders, you saw last year the defense really carried the team. The defense won some games for them. It kept them in some other games while the offense was kind of struggling. And that's with, like you had mentioned a lot of times, the disparity in how much they spent on the offense compared to how much they spent financially on the defense. Now you have that defense is a year older, more mature. Maybe you'll see some of these younger pass rushers break out, which would be great. You know that Christian Wilkins is going to be a big factor, or they're planning on it being a big factor because that was the guy that they identified to go out and spend big money in free agency on. So I think he's got to be excited about that. I'm expecting the Raider defense to be sound and to be solid from jump, this season. I think that they are going to be, I think the offense has big potential, like we talked about, depending on the quarterback play, depending on how things work out. But I think the defense is going to be bringing every week. I think that, and listen, they got some challenges. We've talked about, you got to face the Chiefs twice. You're going to have to face Justin Herbert a couple of times. They faced the Dolphins, who have an explosive offense, and that game's in Miami where they tend to really put up big numbers. And there's more games as well, but I think that they're going to be ready to go.
So I have to tell you something funny. One of the Raider players recently, and when I say recently, within the last 6 weeks, told me this. Everybody talks about, oh, you got to face the Chiefs twice. When's someone going to talk about they got to face us? And we're the last team to beat them. So I'm going to say this to you, and I know you're not a disrespecter, so don't hear that. But it's time for people to put a little bit of respect on that Raider name, too, because the Chiefs got to play them, don't they?
It's true. I think that that's a big transition in the NFL when you go from a team that when fans are looking at it like, oh man, we got to play the Chiefs this week or whatever. When that opposing fan base says, we got to play the Raiders, that's going to be a tough game. That's when you've sort of taken that next step and you're starting to arrive. Because I think that if you're a Chief, just look at the Chiefs in particular, since we've mentioned them, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're saying, if we got to play, the Bills, obviously they've beaten the Bills a lot, but you're going against a good team and one of the better quarterbacks. If they play the Bengals, okay, the Bengals beat us in the playoffs a couple of years ago. You're going against, if Joe Burrow's healthy, an elite quarterback. If you're going against, say the Packers or the Eagles or somebody from the NFC, you're going against one of the better teams in that conference. If you're the Chiefs, now you're saying, what are you thinking of the Raiders? Because they've handled the Raiders. They've obviously been the better franchise, but the Raiders were the last team to beat them, and they beat them at Arrowhead, and they beat them on national TV. And, that there's got to be a little bit of a measure of revenge, I think, there on the Chiefs' mind, number one. And number two, when you are a team that an elite team like the Chiefs is going in saying, oh, man, that's a tough one this week. Because obviously they're thinking they can win any game with Patrick Mahomes, but they know they're going to have to work for it, and they know they could lose. That's when you jump to that next level in the NFL in the tiers.
And I think, you talked about the Chiefs feeling like they have to avenge something. I think the Raiders feel like they have to prove something, that it wasn't a fluke. Okay, let's change directions now. Tom McMahon, the Raiders special teams coach, is a legend. He is a nutty professor, and I mean that with the ultimate of respect. He is known as a special teams just guru, savant. And his press conference, I'm sure you saw it, was nuts. He's jumping all over the stage, explaining, hitting the ball into the triangle. I am now excited for the first time in my life for kickoffs, Matt Hladek.
Well, I think the kickoffs are going to be an interesting strategy and an interesting part of the game again with the new rules. Obviously with Trey Tucker, the Raiders have a guy who they spent the third round.
Labe.
What happened?
And Dylan Labe too.
Yes. Those two guys are guys that they drafted and with their special teams prowess in mind, and you're going to see the return game, I think, play a bigger role league-wide this year. And I'm interested to see how special teams coaches, the smart special teams coaches, number one, how they deploy personnel, because it's going to come down to, okay, are there guys that you maybe wouldn't necessarily have as your full-time kick returners, but you have them in the mix now or save them for certain situations because you think they can be a weapon. Or they're guys that, that have been stymied a little bit by the old rules. Now you think that they can break out and be a bigger impact for your team. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. Obviously, on the kicking side of things, it helps that he has two elite guys to work with AJ Cole and Daniel Carson. That's always a good place to start with. But I think the return game should be a lot of fun around the NFL this year.
I agree with you. All right. Last one is Luke Getzey. Spoke to Luke earlier this week. I just like his style. I like his, aw shucks, Richie
Yeah.
Cunningham. And I mean that with respect. There's no disrespect in that at all. He just, we're gonna do what we do. And to me, when you look at his total career work, it's phenomenal. When I talk to people within the Bears organization, and when I talk to one particular Bear player, they felt like he took a lot of the blame, and it was not a Getzey issue at all. Matter of fact, one particular person said to me, Luke was the fall guy for a failed 2023. I thought that was powerful. So my question for you is this season, is the most important person this season on the offense Luke Getzey?
You could make a case. I still think, obviously, I mean, it's the easiest answer, but the easiest answer I think is the quarterback, whoever's playing quarterback, of
Agree.
course.
Agree with you.
But I do think it's interesting to see what Luke Getzey does because this is a guy who, yeah, there's a little bit of uncertainty, at least in terms of who's going to start at quarterback. But when you look at the weapons he has around him, there's a lot at his disposal, a lot of different things he can make happen with this personnel with the Raiders. Now they changed up their offensive line a little bit. You got the rookie Jackson Powers Johnson, who I think is going to be a really good player for them. So there's a little bit of a change in the offensive line, but I still think the O line will be solid for the Raiders. So I think that's a good foundation to have. And then we talked last week about all the skill guys that are at his disposal. So I think if I'm Luke Getzey, I'm feeling pretty good about the situation I'm stepping into. And I do think that there's an element of him kind of being able to prove himself because I think there were people that thought that, excuse me, he was the reason for the failed offense with the Bears or the reason that Justin Fields didn't take off or things like that. And I think this is his opportunity to say, hey, it wasn't all me. I know what I can do. I know what I bring to the table.
Totally agree. He's the one and only, the great Matt Hladek. Go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. Listen, we are pumping out 10 or more pieces of written content every day, over 20 pieces of content when you count videos and everything else. Nobody covers the Raiders more thoroughly than us. It's 100% free. Go check it out. Matt, is always great to have you. Stay in the line. I want to talk to you. And to all of you, have a great, wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Remember, Veterans Day is to honor veterans. 4th of July is to honor America's birthday. But Memorial Day is a day that we honor those who paid the ultimate price. Those people, men and women, who've given their life for our country. For our country. It's an amazing day. It's a day that America stops. The reason we have hot dogs and hamburgers and fireworks and swimming and all the things that go with having a day off is because we just take a day and hit the brakes and relax. And we thank God for those people that thought our country was so valuable. Men and women, all colors, all religions or lack thereof, all political persuasions, all socioeconomic backgrounds, men and women of every one of them that said, I love America enough that I'm willing to die for her. And we appreciate you people. You're the absolute best. And all of you who've lost a person for our country, thank you. We honor them. We honor their commitment to this terrific nation. And we honor you and your family for making that sacrifice. I challenge all of you. Have a blast this weekend, but take a moment. Honor, say a prayer, thanksgiving, but do something. Honor this country that we have. Honor all of those who thought she was worth dying for. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you.